welcome to Big Muddy Mayhem, the podcast where we talk about true crime and bad behavior in the Midwest.
Each week, we'll bring you 2 stories from the heartland that might break your heart, but we hope to entertain you along the way.
I'm Janet O'Brien.
I'm Tracey Laricha.
Hello!
Hello there, Janet. How are you?
Good. I haven't seen you in a bit.
I know. It's been a little while. We're in the thick of it, aren't we?
Yes.
So this episode will come out on Friday.
Yes, it'll come out tomorrow.
The Friday before Christmas.
Yes.
So if you're tearing your hair out and... and stressing out if you also are out of tape. How am I out of tape?
I don't know. Exactly.
Then we're right there with you.
Yeah, our next episode will come out after Christmas because there is no way in the heck we're going to have time to record before Christmas. Just
ain't
happening. So, yeah, we're going to get back on schedule again. The holiday,
We'll
November,
take the holiday week off.
November,
every podcaster does it.
Yeah, every November and December, you got this. This happens every November and December, I think, with most podcasts. So,
and that's kind of been my problem is that normally when I'm doing stuff like baking and shopping and cooking and all the stuff I need to do this week.
Right.
I just looked back in my Facebook memories and reminded me that I had the same problem 2 years ago. I'm like, I'm out of podcasts. No! So, if you want like a good multi-part one that's all the way caught up now, it can be a little bit sad, but it is riveting. And that is, listen to The Good Whale.
Okay.
It was put up by the New York Times, and it's about the life of Keiko, the whale from Free Willy.
Oh, wow.
And so it's really good and really interesting. Okay. So if you just need something to listen to while you're out and about, do it. Although, gosh, save the last episode for when you can ugly cry.
Okay. Good to know.
But yeah, apart from that.
Yeah. So, I think we have 2 stories for the evening.
We do have 2 stories tonight.
I actually went again for the Christmas thing.
I did too.
Hey!
I hope we don't have the same one.
Sorry, I know.
Well, if we do, we'll make it work.
We'll figure it out real fast.
This week is all about, pivot. Just go in it.
Right.
All right.
Oh, okay. So... mine takes place in Michigan.
Okay, we're good.
We're good? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't need to worry about that. Have you heard, and I am going to butcher this last name, Mark Latunski?
Latunski? No, I have not.
Latunski. So, Latunski.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So, he was a chemist by trade. Mm-hmm. He got married. He was the father of 4 children. In 2013, he ended up getting a divorce.
Okay.
And the reason why he was getting a divorce is that apparently he had been messing around behind his wife's back, but it was with men. So...
Family Feud number 1 answer. Yeah, well, not the with men part, but the messing around.
Right.
Like infidelity. Yeah.
Right. So she wasn't very happy with that. She's like, well, we're getting a divorce. He's like, wait, what? No, we're getting a divorce. This isn't going to work.
Okay.
And he ends up actually getting remarried to a man for about 3 years.
Okay.
And he, again, when he was married and with his first spouse, mm-hmm. he made a lot of money. And this is in the early 2000s. He was pulling in a 6-figure figure.
Now, what is it that he does again?
He's a chemist.
He's a chemist. Okay,
right.
So we're kind of, we're still funding.
Right. So,
and I guess it depends on what kind of chemistry too, if he's working for.
Right. I'm not sure what kind of chemist, but anyway.
But anyway, he's doing well for himself.
Right. But he ends up, going through the whole, nope, I like guys. They end up getting a divorce. He ends up marrying this guy. Really likes the BDSM thing. He's a leather guy.
Okay.
We all know there are leather guys, but he was totally a leather guy.
And the kids all...
I guess, he still had a relationship with the children.
Sure, but I'm guessing that, the the children stay with mom?
I assume. Yeah, I assume they do. Again, not a whole lot of information on that.
Okay.
But so he ends up with this guy for about 3 years, and then he starts struggling with his mental illness.
Okay.
In 2010 and again in 2014, Mark is diagnosed with severe and recurrent and chronic major depression with psychotic features, adjustment disorder with depression, and anxiety and paranoid schizophrenia, and borderline personality traits.
Bingo!
So he has all of them.
Right.
Just, he's not doing so great. He ends up no longer working as a chemist because of his issues. I'm sure this affected his second relationship because they end up getting a divorce about 3 years later after he marries to that guy.
Well, and that just has to shake your sense of self too.
Right.
Going through all of that at once.
Yeah, so he's not doing so great. So, per his ex-wife, when he did have a habit though, because he started getting diagnosed with this stuff when he was still with his wife. But when he would stop taking his meds, things would go wrong in his head. And his wife said that he had a really bad habit of watching torture movies.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and according to some doctors and nurses, to have all of this, diagnosed, that is super rare to have all of it diagnosed like that.
And it almost sounds like that self-loathing kind of plays out.
Right, exactly.
Oh.
So, October 10th of 2019, he's only been divorced from his husband probably for a couple of years. He ends up meeting this guy by the name of James Carlson. He's 48 years old, and he calls 911. And I listened to the phone call, and there's this man on the other phone, and he's like, listen, I just want to let you know, I just escaped from a basement.
Oh my.
I met this man at, we were talking to each other. I guess they met on Grindr. And when he met him, he took a bus from New York and came to Michigan to meet this guy. And so they end up...
That is a long way to go for a Grindr
I
date.
know, right? I know. I have no idea what he's trying to sell, but
I mean, my gosh, most guys in LA are like, 35 minutes at the 101.
No thanks.
No, thank you.
So and I'm listening to the phone call, and he's like, listen, he goes, I'm from New York. I just, I went to I met this guy. We went out to go get like a bite to eat or something. I had a soda, and then I blacked out. And I woke up in his basement, chained or tied down or whatever. He's like, he found a saw or something and he had leather straps on him, so he was able to get the leather straps off of him and get out of the basement. And he's like, listen, and when you listen to him, he's just like so nerve-wracked. He's like, I don't care what happens, I have to go home. And so they kept on the phone with him. Eventually, he never reconnected with this Mark guy, but he's like, what?
Why? No second date?
No! So he's like,
Look at his tough out there, and he said he was 48. Maybe he should just settle.
But he said he got himself free with like a butcher knife that he found in the basement. And the only reason why he came to Michigan was for sex. Because I guess there's not enough in New York. I
was gonna say,
I don't know.
I don't think I've ever driven more than like 45 minutes.
I was just very confused by this. And then
but gas prices were cheaper then.
Well, he took a bus. He took a bus.
Oh, okay, yeah. So transit. All right. So
he took a bus. Just so crazy. There's a cat trying to get into your cabinet right now.
All right. Janet,
Yes?
I can still hear you,
Yes.
but I'm also going to have to the same cat that just learned how to use the toilet has also figured out how to get into the pantries. I'll be right back.
Tracy's cat is crazy. He's a sweetheart, but no. Oh my God.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, are you back?
The kitchen is now the kitchen cabinets are walker-proofed. I have to go out over the next couple of days and get actual child-proof latches.
What? Why?
To keep my kitten out.
Now, I'm going to show you a picture, and I'm pretty sure this is why he was able to convince people to come from other states to visit him.
Okay.
He's the taller guy in the blue shirt.
Oh, he is, especially if you're looking on leather sites or daddy sites.
He's an attractive man.
He is tall. He is broad of shoulder. He's got nice pecs. He is
he's almost 50 years old in this picture,
he looks
too.
He does look younger. I'm sorry, officer. Was I going too fast?
Right?
He has, a very, he's got that look.
Right, exactly. So, because I was looking at the other pictures, I'm like, he's okay, but and I'm like, oh, no, I can see why that happened. So,
Sure.
Anyway, okay.
Although, oh gosh, I can't believe I was just gassing up this guy that locked someone in a basement.
So, because of this, because the guy who got out of the basement, no charges were pressed. He was just done. He wanted to go home. He's just like, I don't.
They get him home. He's not trying to press charges or anything like that.
He just wants to get the hell out of there because I just woke up in a basement.
Correct. And the cops don't want it. They're all right, let's save you the paperwork and put you in a cab.
Right. So,
Got it.
Month later, a neighbor encountered a man on his front porch covered in blood, wearing just leather. Certain parts of his body were exposed, but he had leather on. And I watched an interview of that as well. There was a guy.
My gosh, you did a deep dive.
There was a guy who was on the news, and he's like, all I know is 4 a.m. and somebody's knocking on my door.
Oh my god!
And this guy, he's clearly a much younger person. Mm-hmm. He's freaking out. He's like this guy that he kept saying over and over again. Where did he say it here? He just kept saying, he's going to hurt me. He's going to hurt me. He's going to hurt me. And then he said, and all of a sudden this silver SUV pulls up into my driveway, and this other man gets out, and he's also wearing just leather. He's wearing a leather skirt, and
And is he tall and beefy and bearded?
Yes, and of course he's trying to play it off oh, I didn't mean to scare him or whatever, and the guy's like, no, and he's like the kid.
The blood?
Yeah, the kid is grabbing his arm, the guy, the neighbor, trying to hide behind him, and he's like he was scared to death.
Completely. Oh my gosh.
Just scared to death, and so the cops end up showing up. Mark ends up leaving. They talk to him, and he's like, "No, I woke up in his basement, tied up."
Oh, wow.
So this is the second guy that woke up tied up in a basement. And again, doesn't press any charges. So no charges are pressed.
But by this point, shouldn't this person be on some kind of radar somewhere?
You would think. Who knows? Yeah, he said, the thing he kept saying is he wants to hurt me. That's what he kept saying. So nothing happens. That we move on. So now I'm going to talk about his name is a certain name, but it is not him. It is not the same one.
Okay.
There was a guy by the name of Kevin Bacon. This is Kevin Bacon.
Oh my.
He's 25 years old.
Uh-huh.
He's a hairdresser.
Mm-hmm.
And he has...
6 degrees of passed out basement.
I know! He also has some mental issues. He's been, kind of on a certain watch, And the very beginning of December, he actually had just checked out of a hospital for trying to make himself unalive.
Okay.
So he's only been out of the hospital for like 3 weeks, this Kevin Bacon guy.
So this is someone whose mental health might be like kind of at a delicate state right now.
Exactly. And Christmas Eve arrives, and the family is having a thing, and Kevin does not want to go to it because there's somebody at the family event. We've all been to these before that he really doesn't want to see. And he's like, I don't really want to do that. So he gets on Grindr and he finds this guy by the name of Mark. And they're chatting away, and then this Mark fella invites him over, and he goes over there, and what he basically... he has been promised that some other people are going to come over and there's going to be a sex party.
So he's just like, woohoo. Like,
this is way better than what I was going to do.
So long, Aunt Linda. I'm going to go have a holly jolly Christmas.
Right.
Oh.
So he gets to the house and he ends up messaging his roommate, this gal by the name of Michelle. And I'm like, oh my gosh, listen. I'm going to stay here for the evening. I don't know when I'm going to come back. It's going to be here probably pretty late. Just want to let you know. I'm at least cluing her in.
You know what? That's a good thing to do. If you're staying at somebody's house for any reason and you are not coming back that night, the common courtesy, just let them know. Not to expect you.
Right. It's going to be a little bit. I think some fun's about to happen. So that happens. And so he's over at Mark's house. Mark lives in Bennington Township, which is in Michigan. At 5:20 p.m., Kevin shows up over to Mark's house. And after he makes the phone call, nobody hears from him. The next morning, Kevin's parents... Because, they knew he just got out of the hospital 3 weeks ago. And they're like, okay, he was supposed to be here for breakfast. Where is he? Because he's supposed to come over to his parents' house.
Higher level of worry.
And his dad, is there in a higher alert because of what Kevin's been going through already.
Completely.
So his dad calls the police and is like, listen, there's something not right. Because Kevin did not come home. Later that day... They end up finding Kevin's vehicle, his wallet, and his cell phone in the dollar store parking lot.
This is where I would actually really start to panic.
Right. So that is not good at all. They end up searching his phone, and they find this app.
Oh.
Grindr. And there's all the text messages between him and this Mark guy. And if they just so happen to know who Mark is because of those two other things that happened in the past 2 months.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So they were like, okay, it took them a couple of days to figure it out. And they're like, well, you know what? We're going to go over to Mark's house and we're going to figure out what's going on. So on December 27th, they end up going over to Mark's house.
For visit number 3.
Yes. And they're like, and Mark is... very courteous, very nice. He lets him in. Sure, you can see the place. It's fine. Come on in. So they start wandering around. They're like, okay, basement. We need to go check out the basement. So they go into the basement and they find a secret room.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
And in the secret room, they find Kevin dead, hanging upside down from the rafters, stabbed a bunch of times, and castrated.
Oh my.
So they're like, okay, what is going on? So they talk to Mark, and Mark's like, yeah, I killed him. But Mark goes back and forth on his story. He starts off with like, oh, it was consensual sex and something went wrong.
It just got out of hand.
Right.
Then I hung him upside down like a bat and stabbed him.
Right. And never mind the fact that his throat is also slashed. And then they're like, oh, he wanted, he's been struggling with some mental illness and he wanted me to murder him.
He wanted me to do it.
Which, when they look back at the Grindr text, they're like, no, that's not what was going on. Kevin came over because he thought you were going to have a sex party.
Yeah.
That was not what was in the deal.
Oh, dear.
Mark had castrated him and decided to eat something.
Oh no, I was just about to ask. Oi.
So he ate that part of his body.
Okay.
And so they finally, they're like, okay, what are we going to do about this? And so they talk to Mark, and I guess Mark ends up trying to plead insanity. Well, that doesn't end up working because...
It's happened 3 times for starters.
Yes. And so he finally just says, okay, ends up pleading guilty because he's not going to be able to go through trial and not get away with this. So he's like, okay, fine, I plead guilty. And they ask him, and he's like, he drugged him, he stabbed him, he slit his throat, and he mutilated him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's not... Okay, so I learned a new thing today about Michigan. Apparently some states have this thing called open murder. Have you ever heard of open murder?
I have not.
It is a combination of first and second degree murder.
That's interesting, and I wonder if it doesn't come in handy sometimes when you're not quite sure where you would charge.
Exactly. So they charged him with open
murder because they don't know if they could get first, but they also feel like this is way more than second.
Right, exactly.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So they end up charging him with open murder. He is basically in jail for the rest of his life. No chance of parole whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just really... I had never heard of open murder. That was the most interesting thing I had read about this, other than the whole cannibalism thing.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, clearly he had not done anything like this before. They did interview his ex-husband, and the ex-husband was like, I would have never thought in 1,000 years that he would do something like this. Right. But the wife... The reason why they knew about the torture movies that he was watching was when he was going through the divorce with his wife.
Well, at that point in time, he's probably not able to kind of play out the kind of kink that he's prone to.
Right.
That clearly escalates to an unacceptable level.
Exactly.
Just saying.
Don't go there.
We're not kink shaming, but we are murder shaming. We are torture shaming. We are kidnapping shaming. We here at Big Money Mayhem.
We do not
support murder.
We do not support murder, even though that's what our podcast is about.
But oh my gosh.
Yeah, so he ends up just basically eating this guy's balls.
Oh, wow. The keto diet is getting out of hand.
Out of control. It's out of control.
Completely out of control.
So it's not a very long story. I figured it would be pretty short because there's just not a ton of background information other than the fact that they both had mental illness. Again, things we need to address our mental illness.
In this country.
So badly. So badly.
Completely.
Or things like this happen. I think, Mark didn't try to get away with it.
No, he...
And they said the reason why he tried to plead insanity was not necessarily to get out of it. What they wanted to do is they wanted to put him locked down in a hospital where he belongs.
Where he would get mental health care as opposed to just
jail.
Incarceration.
Right. That's why they tried to do the whole, but it didn't pan out. So that's my story. It's kind of terrible. It happened on Christmas Eve. So that makes it all Christmassy. And unfortunately, Kevin is no longer with us because of this.
Which, I guess, oh God, you don't want to say 2 out of 3 ain't bad. No. But it is nice that the other 2 people escaped with their lives.
Escaped.
And that, I would really have preferred that, that he ended up like you said, in a healthcare facility.
Right.
But at least there will be no 4th or 5th or 37th or whatever.
Exactly. Because once you start getting the ball rolling with some people, they just can't stop.
And then it escalates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my Merry Christmas story.
Janet, I have a terrible Christmas story for you. I love that we always knew exactly what to get each other. And you may know this one.
Okay.
But if you haven't, buckle up.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the story of the Sodder family?
No.
Okay.
That I know of.
All right. It's Christmas in 1945.
Okay.
And we're going to get there. But first, let me tell you a little bit of our background here.
Okay.
George Sodder. He's born in 1895. He's born in Sardinia, which is an island off the coast of Italy. And so he immigrates to the United States in 1908. He comes over with his older brother. Now, they come through Ellis Island, and that's where, like, his last name, it was like Giorgio Sodder,
Right.
But then he becomes George Sodder.
Ah.
He comes with his older brother. Older brother kind of takes one look around and says, nah, not for me, and jumps right back on the boat to go back to Italy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So George is here by himself.
Wow.
Completely alone, doesn't speak the language, at Ellis Island. Oh, he's 13.
Oh, my God. Let's just drop your 13-year-old brother off and bye.
Ciao! Ciao! So he's 13. He gets a job somehow, like, working on a railroad. And ends up from the railroad finding out that, like, hey, if you move to West Virginia, there is this trucking company out there, and there's also a small Italian community in this town. So it's sort of like the Hill, or like, I mean, look anywhere in the country and you'll see like these little immigrant communities that pop up, because now you have a sense of community, people that speak the language, that can teach you English, can teach you the ropes.
Exactly.
All of that. So he moves to West Virginia and he's driving trucks. Well, as he's driving trucks, he's like, bigger dummies than me. Like my boss runs this trucking company and I don't know any less than he does. So he starts his own trucking company.
Oh, wow.
And he does really well for himself. So he's starting to make a good living. He walks into a local shop one day and he sees Jenny Ciprioni. She is also an Italian immigrant, although she came over when she was 2 and nobody left her stranded on the dock. So they get married almost right away. And between the years of 1923 and 1943, they have 10 children.
Oh my gosh.
And that's not surprising, but what is surprising, they all live. All 10.
Oh, that is surprising.
Even in the 40s,
yeah.
Like 20s, 30s, 40s, like even that, like that's pretty good. So they're in Fayetteville, West Virginia.
Okay.
There is, like I said, a pretty strong Italian community there. And he is kind of pretty respected amongst that community. They are solid middle class. He has like a nice house. The children are polite and well kept. His wife is, well liked and respected. Everybody likes them in the community, although George is pretty opinionated, and he is especially outspoken about politics.
Okay.
Well, again, this would be like in the mid-40s.
Right.
So...
Now, is he for or against FDR is the question.
Oh, well, it's not so much that it is like about fascism, in that we are like in the middle of World War II.
Yeah.
And he's an Italian living in an Italian community.
Okay.
And Italy is fighting on the side of the Germans. The U.S. has entered the war in 1941, I think. And but he is very opinionated. He has adopted his newfound homeland.
Oh.
And so he is very anti-fascist. And
Good.
he is very anti-Mussolini.
Good.
And he is not afraid to let anybody know about it.
Awesome.
Because he's doing well for himself. He doesn't have to kiss anybody's butt, you
Right.
know? So he's just kind of like, yeah, F this.
Right.
Well, like I said, Italy's at war with the U.S., and so, like, he's kind of, like, it's a little contentious in his community. We're going to go to 1945 Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And this is where our story really begins.
Gotcha.
So the family, the oldest daughter is working at a Five and Dime.
Okay.
And I'm going to pull up my photos here for you. Anyway, the oldest daughter, she works at the Five and Dime. We've got one kid that I think might already be out and married, and then one that is off in the army.
Gotcha.
Like fighting, fighting on the side of the U.S. Well, hold on one second. Marion is the oldest child. I needed to get her name because she's the only one that we'll like really get back to.
Okay.
Marion's working at the Five and Dime. She comes home on Christmas Eve and she has arms full of presents for the younger kids.
Nice.
Like, you know when you're the oldest, you're
Yes.
like oldest sister, you want to spoil your family. And she comes home and like, oh, Mama, can't they just open up a couple of presents each on Christmas Eve?
Sure.
Now, the two boys, the oldest boys that had been out working, like, for the trucking company that he owns, like, they're already in bed. I think George is already in bed.
Gotcha.
Mom's getting ready to go to bed, but she lets the oldest daughter know, like, yeah, fine. You guys can stay up a couple of hours late and play with the new toys.
Sure.
Just lock the door and shut the lights out when you turn in. And so she takes the youngest child, who's 2 years old, and she goes up to bed and goes to sleep. Well, anyway, like I said, I think they're like 14, 12, 10, 8,
Right.
like young kids. They stay up to play. Mama Jenny is in bed, and she said she turned in at about 11:30, and about 12:30 Christmas morning, the phone rings. So, which, I mean, they're doing well enough. Like, they've got a phone in the house.
Right.
They've got a pretty nice house, like, a big enough house that, like, they're plenty of their 10 kids, or, like, 9 of their 10 kids are living there.
Right.
She wakes up, and she answers the phone, which is downstairs, because they don't have, like, 2 phones.
No.
In the house,
They have one phone.
one phone. She answers the phone, and it's a woman asking for somebody whose name she doesn't know and doesn't recognize. But the woman is laughing, and Jenny knows this because she's like, she had a weird laugh. And she says, in the background, I can hear a bunch of other conversations going on, and then just like,
Oh, yeah.
like clink clink of glasses and ice shaking in tumblers and all of that. And she's like, I'm sorry, no one by that name. And the woman laughs and hangs up. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's 12:30 in the morning, Christmas Eve going into Christmas,
Right.
not a day. She's like, all right, whatever, drunkie. Get home safe. Good night.
Right.
So she goes back to bed. And then she does notice, though, as she's going back to bed, that her oldest daughter, the one that was at the Five and Dime, is sleeping on the couch. And she doesn't see any of the other kids, but their bedroom was upstairs. So she's like, like, I'm sure they probably just went up to sleep. And then Marjorie just, fell asleep
Right.
on the sofa. So she locks the door and she turns the lights off. And she goes back up with her husband and 2-year-old and climbs back into bed and goes to sleep. She kind of vaguely remembers at about 1:30 in the morning she hears a thud on the roof and kind of like a rolling noise.
Oh, interesting.
But, they're living kind of in the woods, and she's like, pine cone,
Right.
whatever, something. Santa?
Right.
Whatever. So she rolls over and goes back to sleep. The next hour, about 2 o'clock, I guess, ish in the morning, she wakes up and the house is on fire.
What?
Like fully engulfed in flames.
Oh my God.
She grabs her 2-year-old and she and her husband run out of the house. When they get outside, the oldest daughter and the two oldest sons were also both outside.
Good.
The two oldest sons, it's back and forth. They say at first that they shook the younger kids to wake them up, but then later they say, we yelled up the stairs to wake them. So it's Christmas morning. It's like 2:30. And the house is on fire. And the 5 youngest children are up in like an attic apartment.
Oh, no.
That can only be accessed by one staircase. You know, kind of like you'd pull down the attic stairs. Well, the father, he breaks a window, George, and he runs back in, but the staircase is engulfed in flames, and so is the whole first floor.
Ugh.
So he can't get to them that way, and if they're up there, they can't get down.
No.
So he's like, oh my God, what do we need to do? The dad tries to get to the top floor. He's like, there's a ladder that we always have leaning up against the house. The ladder isn't there. Not today, anyway.
Yeah.
So the ladder is later found in a ditch some like 75 yards away. The dad also, remember, he owns a trucking company.
Right.
So he has a couple of big trucks. If you just hop up onto the top of one of those, that'll put you at a 2-story house, right? Well, even though both of those trucks had been out on jobs earlier in the day, neither one will start.
Okay, that's not good.
He literally has no way to get to his, like, the upper floor of his house to check on or rescue his children. One of the daughters runs to a neighbor, and because, obviously they can't get in the house to call for help, they run to a neighbor, bang on the door. They call the fire department. Also, another nearby neighbor kind of wakes up and sees the blaze and also calls the fire department. Both of those calls, there are no operators on duty. It just rings and rings and rings. It could just be because it's Christmas Eve. You know? So somebody goes into town and, like, tries calling from, like, a nearby tavern. Also can't get a hold of anybody.
Wow.
So another neighbor is like, I know where the fire chief lives.
Oh, okay.
Goes in, I mean, small town. Knocks on his door. Like, hey, wake up.
Right.
Fire. The fire chief says, oh, well, I can't go help with that fire because I, the fire chief, I don't know how to drive this fire truck.
But I know somebody who does, probably.
I need to find somebody that can drive this truck. So, the house, according to witnesses, the house burns to the ground completely in approximately like 30 to 45 minutes.
Jesus.
Which, that's fast.
That is super fast.
Even, like, I don't care what the cause is. That's fast
that's
for
way
a house
fast.
fire.
It is.
So this is like, all right, I guess about 2:30 the fire starts. So give it an hour. Let's be generous. It's Christmas.
Right.
Let's say by 3:30 the fire has completely consumed the house and it's burned to the ground. Fire truck shows up about 8 a.m. Hours after the fire has been reported. The house is burned to the ground. There's no sign of the 5 younger children. The chief kind of takes a look around and says, like, they done burned all up.
Wow.
Like, they're burned all the way up. But there are still portions of, like, appliances and stuff that are intact within the house. But they don't see remains. They don't find clothing.
You would find something.
They don't find anything. Now, later as they're kind of going through the yard, one thing that I couldn't find out a whole ton about is that George had also been, I think, a soldier
Okay.
for a time, and so he recognizes a canister, what they called a pineapple gas canister. That was like, he finds like a case from one of those somewhere on his property. And he's like, well, I don't know, maybe this. But
Right.
they kind of poo-poo it. And basically, the fire chief looks and just says like, oh no, your house burned to the ground and your 5 children burned with it.
Wow.
So this is Christmas Day. January 2nd of 1946.
Okay.
George, like, he and Jenny, they've lost half of their children. They've lost their home. They've lost everything. He can't stand looking at that wreckage anymore. So he goes and he gets, with his trucks, I'm sure, 5 feet of fill dirt and just kind of covers everything.
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to just put a fence up around it and build a memorial garden to the kids we lost. An inspector comes through and says, oh, this was faulty wiring. Like, this was faulty wiring in the home. It caused an electrical fire. And unfortunately, this is what happens. Like, and so they issue 5 death certificates.
Wow.
And the investigation is closed as, like, faulty wiring.
Wow.
Now, here's an interesting thing.
Okay.
Like I said, George and his family were doing really well. And one of the things that they had just recently, like within a few weeks of Christmas, had done, he had gifted the family with a new electric stove and had it wired.
Oh.
And because he's kind of a mechanically engineered kind of mind, he had, after the installation, he had the power company come out and, like, had also, like, an inspector come out.
Oh, wow. So he was on top of it.
He was on top of it, and they both said, wiring's great, looks good, good job, enjoy your stove.
Wow.
Also, they said it was faulty wiring and that the wiring burned and that's what caused the spark. But people that were there watching the house burn said that you could see through the front window and the lights were still on the Christmas tree.
Oh.
And also, remember, when Mom went downstairs, the lights were still on.
Right, yeah, they were.
On the lower floor. Like, an hour before, or 2 hours before that started. So... this is not even the beginning of the weird stuff.
Okay.
A few weeks prior to that, George was hiring for a new truck driver.
Okay.
And some random dude came by and, hey, he didn't have any truck driving experience. Nobody knew who he was. George was just like, yeah, don't call us, we'll call you.
Right.
But this guy says, that wiring's going to start a fire.
What?
And I guess a week after that, George is like at home and some guy comes by. This is back in the 40s when anything you sold was like door to door practically.
Yeah.
So somebody comes by selling life insurance. And George is like, no, I think we're good. Like, I've put away enough. I don't really need life insurance and, this, that, and the other. And he says to George, the insurance salesman, this goddamn house is going to burn with your children in it.
What?
And you'll be repaid for all the nasty things you've said about Mussolini.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
I am not.
What?
So, turns out that same guy... Also, his occupation is life insurance salesman, but he also served on the jury, the coroner's jury, that issued the death certificates and the cause of death as faulty wiring and a fire.
Oh my God.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So, everything's above board here.
Yes.
Up until this point.
Right?
Jenny and George I don't know why. They start to wonder if those kids really died in a fire.
I would too.
Were they in the house?
Right.
Why are there no remains
Yes.
of anything? So the story starts to get national attention. And, well, what happens, Janet, anytime that a story gets national attention?
I don't know.
Tips start flooding in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I saw them in a car driving by the house on fire the night of the fire. Oh, a woman in Florida says, I served them breakfast that next morning. I know it was them. A woman working in a hotel in South Carolina is like, they came in. They were with a couple of women and a couple of men, and I tried to talk to the children. And then immediately all the adults start speaking rapid Italian to one another, and like the children shut up and like won't look at me. And they left early the next morning. Never heard anything more. Jenny, Mama Jenny is one of us.
Okay. What did she do?
She goes and talks to somebody at a crematorium.
Uh-huh.
And they say, oh no, human bones have to burn for at least 2 hours at about 2,000 degrees, which is hotter than a house fire would
right.
be. Mm-hmm. And to be, like, completely. And even then, like, I mean, ugh.
You're still going to find stuff.
If you get cremains from, like, a person or a pet,
mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys. Merry Christmas. But, like, those cremains have been burned and then probably also, like, pulverized a little bit just so you don't see
bones and stuff, right?
Pieces.
Yes.
Right. So, she starts buying and burning, like, animal bones just to kind of run her own experiments. This girl, she's doing her own research.
Right.
And every single time, she is not finding anything consistent with there's just nothing.
Wow.
So, they have the site excavated. Like, they hire somebody. They're getting no help from local law enforcement. So they have somebody that comes out and is excavating the site.
Yeah.
And as they do, they find some coins. They find, this is the part that, like, I'm like, wait, what? They find some books that had belonged to the children.
Okay.
Which, anybody that's ever had to worry about blowing up parchment paper in their oven or has ever read Fahrenheit 451 knows when paper burns.
Right.
And it's way earlier than bones.
Exactly.
And they do find a few vertebrae.
Okay. So they do find some bones.
They do find some bones. They take those vertebrae and they're trying to figure, like...
Who are they, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, they send it off to be tested by the Smithsonian.
Okay.
Smithsonian tests the bones, and they are vertebrae. And so, as young kids grow, we're a lot more flexible when we're older. I have already done my last cartwheel. So, these bones are fused at certain places that your vertebrae fuse as you mature.
Right.
So this is somebody that is probably, I think they said like 17, 18 years old. The oldest missing child is 14.
Oh.
So they said it's not impossible, but highly unlikely.
That it was the 14-year-old.
And as they do a little bit more study on those bones... Remember when George was going to plant that garden?
Yes.
Remember how he bought 5 pounds?
Oh, you haven't mentioned...
5 feet of...
You haven't mentioned the garden.
The garden? Oh, remember I said he wanted to cover the whole place?
Yeah.
And he bought all that fill dirt?
Yes. The fill dirt it's from the fill dirt.
Surprise! So the vertebrae is from...
Fill dirt.
That he had bought for his children's memorial garden.
Oh
and
my
then
God.
it just happened to
have somebody else's vertebrae. Wow.
And so, like, what a rabbit hole. Like, oh my
wow.
gosh.
What is going on?
The next time you think that your life is like taking a roller coaster. So those are probably like where the...
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that, like, nowadays we could probably... They have genetic DNA on this family. They could test those vertebrae if they hadn't gone missing right after that.
The vertebrae went missing? Oh my God.
We can't find crap in this story. We can't find the kids. We can't find the vertebrae.
Oh my God.
We can't find any remains. Nothing. So they're from the fill dirt. The governor closes the case. So the Sodders have no recourse, nowhere to go from here. So they hire a private detective. And the private detective starts sniffing around town. And he says, gosh, there's somebody that's like been down at like the local tavern and whatnot that says that the fire chief has been spreading a story about how he found a heart in the remains, but he couldn't bear to break the parent's spirit like that. So he put it in an iron box and he buried it at the site.
What?
You know, like you do.
Like you do?
Oh. This is why local elections matter.
Oh my God.
But oh my gosh. So he goes and talks to the fire chief and he's like, hey, gonna need to see this.
Yeah.
Fire chief takes him over to the site. They dig up. There is an iron box.
Okay, good.
There is something inside of it that looks like an organ.
Okay.
They have it tested. It's not a heart. Good news.
Good.
It's a liver.
Okay.
Bad news. It's a beef liver.
Oh.
Good. And he says, oh yeah, well, I did this because I kind of wanted to just put this case to rest, and I just wanted to give the family some closure, is his excuse. So, all right, so again, we're back to zero.
Right.
Right? So they end up hiring, I think, eventually like a second private investigator. And that investigator says, I think I have a lead on like where one of the kids is.
Wow.
Upstate. And he leaves. And they never hear from him again. Like, not only do the Sodders never hear from him again, no one ever.
What?
Their investigator goes missing.
Wow.
Like the guy you sent to find...
He's just gone.
Is gone. So the Sodders, man, they really do explore every single avenue. They are looking at every possible lead, every possible tip.
Sure.
George travels around the country, like, chasing stuff down. It's heartbreaking, like, what these poor parents are going through.
Right.
And they write to the FBI eventually. They're like, can someone help?
Right.
Janet.
Tracy.
Janet.
Tracy.
Janet.
Tracy.
Guess who they get a letter from?
The president?
No.
The director of the FBI?
Yes.
Okay.
Who is J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh my God.
J. Edgar Hoover basically says, I can help, but I can't jump the line behind your local jurisdiction. So as long as, like, your local police are okay,
right,
then yes, we will jump in. Like, the feds will be happy to help you.
Sure.
In this case, because it does seem
there's something
unusual.
going on. Yes.
Well, the local police are like, no.
But you're not doing anything either.
investigation, the FBI is willing to do it. The FBI is willing to do it on their own dime, but local won't allow it.
Oh my God.
These poor parents, like, what do you do?
I do not know. That is insane.
Well, if you're Jenny and George, you keep chasing down leads as best you can.
Right.
George even goes, he sees a photo in a magazine or something of like a ballet class, and he swears that one of the kids in the class, like, I mean, honestly, at this point, I think that they're spiraling a little bit.
Probably, yeah.
One of the kids looks so much like one of his daughters that he, like, shows up at the house of her parents and is like, let me see my girl, like, let me see my... And imagine that, though, if you're, like, that kid's parents and some...
Yeah.
Like, grieving, like, crazy pants father shows up and is like, you know...
Right.
You have my daughter. Like, oof.
Wow. Ugh.
But the Sodders, Sodders, I guess. It's Sodder. It probably is Sodder, but
That's okay.
Anyway, they buy a billboard, and they put up all of the details. And so this is what I'm going to show you. What was their fate? Kidnapped, murdered, or are they still alive? A $5,000 reward is offered by George Sodder for information leading to the recovery of any or all of his 5 missing children.
Wow.
So he has property still in this West Virginia town, so he puts up this billboard, and they eventually up the reward from $5,000 to $10,000. Mm-hmm. They do at one point in time, this is the only other thing that, like, and this to me maybe just seems like something that somebody would do being attention seeking.
Sure.
They get a postcard or a picture in the mail that, and you can see here are the 5 missing children.
Yeah. Oh.
I know. They're, like, also young, and so we're going to look specifically at this one here, Louis, the one with the very dark eyebrows.
Yes.
I mean, they all have, they're Italian, we all have dark eyebrows. But they get a photo in the mail of an older man that would have been the right age to be Louis.
Oh, wow.
He does look a lot like him, but also, I mean, like, it's the kind of, like the national, like they, it's Italians in the 1940s all coming from the same sort of town. Like, everybody.
Yeah.
I take a look at Northern Italians now, and I look like I could be anybody's cousin. Right?
Right.
So it says on the back of the photo, Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, ILIL boys, 890-132-435. Like, that means nothing to anyone in the family. They don't know. It just looks like Louis. So that billboard stayed up for decades.
Wow.
George, the father, dies in 1968, and Jenny, the mother, who never stopped looking, dies finally in 1989.
Jesus.
And it's only after that that the billboard comes down. They don't know exactly what. One possible theory is because it could have been about George being so outspoken, anti-Mussolini. Another thing that they considered is because George was fairly prosperous and owned a trucking company, that it might have been that, small Italian community with a trucking company and it's like doing stuff, so it could have been perhaps mafia related.
Yeah.
Like either he said no to the wrong person or said yes to the wrong person.
Right, exactly.
But it is still to this day completely and totally unsolved.
And you hate unsolved.
I hate unsolved. But this one, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's so compelling.
Right.
And it's so unsolved, and there was just so much that is way wrong.
Yeah, way wrong. Wow.
So
that is a crazy story.
It is a really crazy story. So that is the The story of the Sodder family. My sources today were Wikipedia. There's a great article by an authoress named Karen Abbott called The Children Who Went Up in Smoke. NPR did a story. The photos that I showed you were from the Smithsonian, who also did their work on the bones. And then also Newsweek.com.
Oh, that was a good story.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas! So I think this is where we're going to take a pause.
We're going to take a break. I'm going to show Janet the basement and exactly where the ladder should be. And we're going to think if we can find anything more depressing to tell you before your holiday. And we'll be back finally with something nice.
We'll be back with what's nice. If you enjoy getting muddy with us, here are some ways to help support our podcast. Like and subscribe to the podcast on the platform where you're listening. And of course, a good review will help reach listeners. Please leave us reviews. If you can leave us a review on YouTube, that will definitely affect the algorithm. Even just a hi or a hello, just add that in. That will really help get us out there so people will know that we exist.
Just say stay muddy.
Exactly. If you have any suggestions, please email us at bigmuddymayhem@gmail.com. Make sure to join our Facebook group where we can discuss the episodes and hear your suggestions. And of course, tell your friends, your family, your neighbors. You're going to all of these celebrations over the next 2 weeks. Talk about us.
Stuck in line behind you at the grocery store. Exactly. Let them know that they can go first if they promise to download the podcast right then and there. Grab their phone, do it for them.
Exactly. But yes, please get us out there. We're going to really try to make a push to get more listeners for 2025. And as we love to say, we just love, your support, and we love our Muddy Buddies so very much.
We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't really like it, and
Exactly.
if we didn't think that you really like it. So we thank you for listening, and we wish you all the happiest of holidays and the very best in 2025.
And now we will come back to What's Nice.
We'll come back with...
Welcome back.
Welcome back for What's Nice to lighten up what was kind of a dark episode.
Right. So I think I go first.
You do.
Okay, so we are talking about Bennington Township, which is the town that everything took place. Bennington Township really does not have anything in it.
Other than soundproof basements.
Yeah, apparently. And I'm like, what is nearby? And the only thing I could really find was a nice state park called Sleepy Hollow State Park.
Oh, dear.
It's got a nice lake in the middle of it. It's very cute. That's where I was kind of getting stuck. I'm like, where is the thing? Okay, Sleepy Hollow State Park. It's located in Langsburg, Michigan. It's probably like 10 or 15 minutes away. Nestled just 20 minutes north of Lansing, Michigan. Oh, okay. Sleepy Hollow State Park beckons outdoor enthusiasts with 2,600 sprawling acres of scenic beauty, centered around the picturesque 410-acre Lake Ovid. Okay. The park is popular with paddlers, campers, boaters. They do equestrians go there. The park is home to a modern campground, 2 cabins, a swim beach, boating access, a kayak launch, 4 fishing piers, and miles of trails. Saddle up and explore the park on horseback. The park boasts 12 miles of trails, a convenient staging area, and 2 equestrian-friendly cabins for a comfortable overnight stay.
Oh, nice.
Doesn't that sound nice?
So you could do a whole weekend there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of stuff to do, kind of get away.
And there's a picture of the lake.
Oh, that's beautiful. I don't think I've been to Lake Ovid, but Michigan is just beautiful as is.
Exactly.
It's a pretty state.
But it's kind of in the middle of the state, and it's just north of Wisconsin. Because,
right, exactly.
It looks like a nice park. That
does look pretty.
It's nearby-ish.
Restful and a whole bunch of stuff, too.
Right. So that is my What's Nice.
That is lovely.
Short and sweet.
Mine is also short and sweet. Unlike our stories, which were long and dark. So what I have is, well, like I said, Fayetteville, West Virginia is not what I would have picked for having a really good, like, strong Italian community.
No, not at all.
But they did in the 1930s and 40s when the Sodder family moved there, and they do still have that today.
Right.
It is apparently much akin to, like, our beloved Hill neighborhood here in St. Louis. And one thing that they do have is that in the fall, they always have the West Virginia Italian Heritage Festival.
Ooh.
It's been around since 1979.
Okay.
Which, like we said, Jenny, the mom, died in 1989. So I love that she at least got to live long enough to see this happening.
That's amazing.
And so it is just a few days of celebrating the Italian community and Italian heritage in Fayetteville, West Virginia. And so they have a whole schedule full of events, a pasta cook-off, which, I bet there are still feuds going on over that. A canned pepper contest.
Oh, nice.
Like your jarred peppers, a homemade wine contest.
Nice.
A hot pepper eating competition. And what I love is that throughout the year, they have something called Fritti Sunday.
Okay.
Now, I don't know about you, but, like, if I go to an Italian restaurant and there's, like, calamari fritti, a fritto misto, any kind of little, like, lightly breaded air fry. I mean, Janet and I are getting ready to fire up the air fryer here in just a moment. Any little fried snacks like that, I am all for it. So the third Sunday of each month, starting at 8 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
You can do curbside order and go pick up some frito, like free of something. And like I said, so it looks as though this does take place in the fall, the pasta cook-off, the homemade wine. You can go and just feel like you are part of a big Italian family that maybe didn't immediately lose half of their children to goodness knows what.
Right.
And that is what's nice.
Nice. I love the picture.
I know. It looks like Lady and the Tramp.
It does.
All right. Well, I guess this is about where we sign off.
Right. Just so you know, we are not going to be have any more new episodes for 2024. They are all going to happen after 2025, first week in January for sure. We're going to get back to our Wednesday releases. The holidays just tripped us up a little.
They do, everybody. And again, we really... Janet and I, this is our first year, I guess. In our first year of podcasting, just over.
Yes.
We really appreciate you sticking with us as we go through our learning curve. We really appreciate all of the enthusiasm and support that we have received from you throughout the year. We're really excited about what we're going to bring you in 2025. And so we're just going to take a little pause to kind of, talk things over, get stuff in the can, get ready to go so that we can hit the ground running.
Exactly.
And be ready with great news stories in 2025. So again, as Janet said, please do send us your recommendations. I can't tell you how many times I've been starved for a story and I get like a message from someone and I'm like, ooh, I didn't even know about this. And so please keep feeding us those.
Exactly.
But we wish you very happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, just however you celebrate or even if you don't. Very, very happy holidays. And we genuinely want the very best for all of you in 2025.
Right. And then, as we like to say, what you should also do is stay Midwest nice.
Stay Midwest nice.